Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Riyal Deal Plus, coming to you from the Al Arabiya English studios. I'm Tom Burges Watson. Coming up in today's programme, with gaming and esports a key part of Vision 2030, we're going to speak to the CEO of the Esports World Cup Foundation and ask him what gaming brings into the kingdom in terms of revenue and visitor numbers. We'll also be speaking to the Director General of the Riyadh-based Digital Cooperation Organisation, that is the world's first standalone international organisation focusing on the digital economy. Plus, we tell you about Saudi Arabia's leading role in global humanitarian work, with the kingdom now one of the world's top donor nations. Now, first up, the Esports World Cup Foundation is a non-profit organisation based in Riyadh, and it seeks to advance and professionalise the global esports industry. Well, competitive gaming is hugely popular in the kingdom, and events like the Esports World Cup and the Esports Nation Cup bring together top players from right across the globe. Well, we're joined now by the CEO of the Esports World Cup Foundation, Ralf Reichert. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Ralf. A real pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the Esports World Cup is held every year during the summer months. A pretty good time, I'd have thought, to escape the outdoor heat by being indoors. And we talked about that event on this programme, especially that $70 million prize pool. I just wonder if we could start by just asking you how that event went and what it brought to the kingdom in terms of revenue and visitor numbers.
Sure. I mean, look, we had a show this summer, right, where we talked about the run of the competition itself. So the most important thing is obviously who's going to win the club championship. And this year it was again Falcon, the local Saudi team, but it was a very close call. The year one in 2024, they won by a land mile, so it was a little bit surprised. This year was very close to the last week, and they were, the runners-up were Team Liquid and Vitality. So it was a very good competition to start with. In terms of numbers and economy, it was very successful as well. We had 750 million viewers in 2025 versus 500 million in 24. We had over 3 million visitors to the Boulevard City, growing from 2.6 million in 2024. So it was super successful on its own, while growing clearly year over year.
Okay, so as you say, super successful. Now, gaming and esports strategy are a really big part of Vision 2030, and I just wondered what you think the reason for that is, and what's the role of your foundation in meeting that particular goal of Vision 2030?
So if you look at the impact of gaming and esports, right, I think it's twofold. It's number one, a fast-growing, large global business. It's digital, so it's very scalable, and it's kind of built on the internet, so it's a 21st century business, and therefore very interesting from an economic perspective. But that's not all. It has a huge social part of it as well. If you look at almost everywhere in the world, kids or young adults, there is almost no one who has not grown up with video games. So it's almost the other question around is not who plays video games, but who doesn't. And how does it translate into numbers? If you look at Saudi Arabia, 70% of the population play video games. And out of that 70%, a lot of them are looking at it competitively and then are actually the core target group to attend something like the Esports World Cup. So again, it has two components, a global business future perspective, and then just a perspective on how does it have a social impact on Saudi Arabia as a consumer market, but then across the whole world. And the numbers with 750 million viewers, speak for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that Saudi Arabia has a young population is something we often talk about on this programme. I just wanted to ask you, though, how involved women are when it comes to esports in Saudi Arabia. So
there's a number which is true almost all across the world, is that 50% of the gamer population is female. It's a little bit more skewed towards casual games, like Candy Crush would be the one that comes up to mind. But generally speaking, gaming is for everybody. It's not gender specific. If you look at esports, which is the very competitive part of it, all of the competitions we do at the Esports World Cup are open competitions. Means, right, they're open for male and female participants. It's not segregated at the core. It's actually inclusive from a core idea. Nonetheless, on the top of the competitive pyramid, it's mainly male people. But then if you look at the grassroots and amateur tournament across the world, depending on the game, you would see between 5 and 10%, sometimes 15% of the competitive players being female. So the huge majority is still male. In Saudi Arabia, it's actually even or has a significantly better female quota. So if you look at the grassroots and amateur level, below the top, in Saudi, 20% of the athletes would be female, which is an outlier across the world and just shows how fast this transition has went in the country.
Okay, one thing I wanted to ask you about is, Saudi investors have bought some big titles like Pokemon Go and EA. And I just wonder what's been the national impact of investment decisions like these?
So I think it's very much on the theme that we spoke about earlier. I mean, number one, it's a fast-growing global industry. So the PIF, right, investing into these global gaming companies gives the kingdom a diversification of its economy, a piece in the future value creation across the world, right? Because video games have no borders. They are actually a hobby, an entertainment part all across the world, and a commercial model with this as well. But that is only one side of the story, right? With Saudi Arabia being, and Riyadh specifically being the hub for gaming, it positions itself globally as the place to be if you want to be relevant in video games. It gives a bigger access and a seat at the table at the global discussion about entertainment, which is an amazing feat, thinking about just a few years and how quickly that has changed. And it solidifies the position as the capital of esports and video games across the world. On the other side, what it will bring is local business and jobs, right? So by not only being a consumer of video games, but a producer, local studios are benefiting. I think the number is up from 6 to over 50 in the last 3 years only. Vision 2030 expects almost 40,000 jobs to be in video games in 2030. And all of these international companies are opening offices in the kingdom, are starting to produce games, while saying that this is a long-term effort, right? The skill of creating a video game is almost an art. So it takes time to build the skill set and become globally relevant. But the basis of it is set now.
Now, I want to ask you what challenges esports have encountered in Saudi Arabia. I mean, we've heard some people talking about internet speeds, local servers, ping. Just wondering whether you've had any issues, anything you've encountered.
I mean, all of it, right? I mean, first, it's still new. Esports is still a new sport. So of it being established in schools, of parents understanding it fully, right? That's a journey, and we've come very far, very quickly, but all of that is still in the making, number one. Number two, it's the technical accessibility, as you just suggested, right? Which means there has been historically, like almost only 1.5 years ago, if you wanted to play League of Legends, which is the most successful game in the Esports World Cup, you needed to play in servers in Europe, right? So you couldn't play in the Middle East. And just last year, so right before the Esports World Cup in 2024, the servers were launched in Riyadh, and this is happening across many of those games. So it's on the one side, the accessibility in each home of fast internet, 5G, and all of that is progressing at a fast speed, but that's only one part of the puzzle. The other part is, where are the servers? How close are you to the servers? And there are more and more games companies, as I just said with Riot in League of Legends, are moving into the kingdom and having their servers closer to the players, which then creates a better experience and more competitiveness, actually, after all.
Now, it's often said that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is a big fan of gaming. I don't know if you could tell me any more about that. And I also wonder whether, having him championing this space has made a difference to the growth of the popularity of gaming. I'm sure it has. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, look, he publicly said in this Fox interview that, he's a big gamer and enjoys to go into this world after the job is done on a daily basis, right? So that is obviously a huge endorsement for it overall. And if you look at the Esports World Cup, he has awarded the trophy every single year so far, which just shows, that there's a clear commitment of the kingdom and direct connection to it. So I think overall, we've seen gaming and esports being endorsed all across the kingdom, across all political fields. And even if you look at the conference connected to the Esports World Cup this year, the Ministry of Sport, the Ministry of Investment, the Ministry of IT, all of those ministers, and Prince Faisal, who's kind of the champion of esports, have all been, publicly endorsing it. So I think if you're in esports and interested in it from a political angle, there's no better place in the world than Saudi Arabia.
Do you think there's any potential for a Saudi-grown league, a bit like Live Golf, when it comes to competitive esports?
Look, I think the Esports World Cup is born out of Saudi, and this is the global benchmark now for esports. So there is a clear case of what already happened. For any other sport that's looking into it, obviously there is now direct access to some of the largest game companies in the world. There is all the learnings of the Esports World Cup and the platform as the Esports World Cup. So, for example, Live Golf, or Golf Saudi actually, had a small activation at the Esports World Cup Festival this year. So all of these gaming activities out of the kingdom, out of traditional sports, are actually being integrated as we speak as part of the big events that are happening, like the Esports World Cup or the Esports Nations Cup in 2026.
Okay, and just lastly, you've got a pretty busy year ahead by the sounds of things. Your first Nations Cup is going to be held next year. And just looking at the longer-term vision for the Esports Foundation, where would you like to see esports in Saudi Arabia progressing?
When the Esports World Cup Foundation was announced in 2023, the vision we presented to the world is that we are here to make esports one of the largest sports in the world, head-to-head with the biggest sports tournaments and events as well, like the FIFA World Cup, like the Olympics. And we've come very far with the Esports World Cup in just 2 years. But if you look at the market, and again, our job is to grow the market, what is missing is the national pride aspect. How does my mom watch a tournament, right? If we go back in time, like almost 30 years ago, the only match when I was an athlete, when I was an esports athlete, my mom watched, one was I was playing for the Quake national team in 1998, right? That's where she could relate, where she could clearly understand why this is important. National team esports has never been a big thing in esports, just because clubs have been so dominant and has built such a great following and has built such a big thing. And because it was never politically endorsed and never had the opportunity at the scale it needs to break through. So with the Esports Nations Cup we're launching in 2026, it's the first time that there's a huge multi-game tournament really having the resources to do this right across the world. And it's a big challenge to build, this almost 100 national teams from scratch, because they're not existing. And we've almost piloted the first 2 years how to make esports big. Now we're taking the next steps. Are super excited for the Esports Nations Cup next year, which then will happen every 2 years. We'll travel around the world. Just the first iteration will start in Riyadh, and will make my mom and hopefully a lot of core esports fans, but other moms, watch and become part and fans of esports, like it's happening in the biggest traditional sports, where the nation's part is the door opener to the absolute mainstream.
Okay, well, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Ralf Reichert, the CEO of the Esports World Cup Foundation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, the Riyadh-headquartered Digital Cooperation Organization was launched 5 years ago with 5 members: Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, and Pakistan. Well, since its launch, the DOC has become a global institution with 16 member states, with a combined population of around 800 million people. Well, its stated goal: to enable digital prosperity for all by accelerating the inclusive growth of the digital economy. And the DCO does this by providing an ecosystem with both public and private partners to help tackle digital issues. Well, to tell us all about this, I'm joined here in the studio by Hajar Haddaoui, who is the Director General of the DCO. Thank you very much indeed for coming to see us, Hajar. Now, the DCO says it seeks to pursue common values and goals in the digital economy. Could you give us an example of what that actually means?
So what we aim for, what we stand for is to build resilience in our member state, but also social prosperity. And how we do it is through 4 strategic pillars, which is the first one is the enabler, where we harmonize policy, but also framework to help member state to innovate. The second one is mainly on the cross-border, which is the corridor, cross-border data flow, data embassy, everything related to data that can support also our member state. The third pillar, which is one of the relevance for economical growth, which is the business and innovation. We help entrepreneurs, SMEs, MSMEs that are today 90% of the economy, to support them through Stride Association that can help them to get investment, to get access to the market, and to expand their footprint toward our member state. Last but not least is the social aspect and the social pillar, where we're supporting women, youth, and last but not least, sustainability. With that, we cannot do it only from a strategic pillar perspective. We do it through a data-driven roadmap to showcase how member states can navigate their priorities and innovation and digital transformation.
We're going to come back to some of those issues, especially the empowerment of women, especially the empowerment of the youth, later on in this interview. But I just want to ask you a bit more about the roadmap. You have something called the DEN, which has just been relaunched.
Yes.
This really tells us how you support your member states. Just tell us a bit more about how that works.
Absolutely. In the creation of DCO, it was during the G20. And the reason why was that we talk about digital transformation, but not about digital economy. And digital economy in its 10 dimensions. Therefore, it was important for us not to give an index, but to help and support our member state to navigate their priorities. So we have launched this important navigator where we see the gap between member states. We see where is the priorities for now and how we can close this gap through the initiative and the strategic pillar. For example, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is very advanced in everything related to health, to government, to e-government, to policy also, but still a lot to do in different areas such innovation, gender equality, etc. So how we can focus on those areas, and this index shows where is the gap, and through DCO initiative we can close this gap together, not only by an isolated partnership, but by creating a coordinated coalition to support closing this gap.
Okay, and obviously underserved communities represent a massive opportunity for investors as well. I mean, getting these countries on the digital map means unlocking significant social and economic potential, and it kind of works both ways, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So when we are talking today, we see a huge advancement in African continent, for example, that will reach 742 billion by 2050. We see an amazing transformation in terms of advancement of VCs in the Middle East, entrepreneurs that are driving now the economy. So therefore, the advancement is now in what we call the emerging countries, but it's important to support those countries in terms of processing the capital with the purpose, blending innovation with inclusion, but also shared action that we can work on through DCO member state, not only, but also with the private sector. We have 55 observers now from private sector. It can be multinational, and it can be also local champion, like from Ilm, Humanitarian, STC, and others. But we are not working only with the private sector and government. We have also our partners. We are observer to the UN, and also working with ITU, with UNDP, with UN Women. We don't want to compete in any area. We want to complete each other to strengthen a new multilateralism that can help to close the digital divide.
I wanted to ask you about the impact of artificial intelligence on global inclusivity. How has that worked? Has it served as an accelerator to inclusivity, do you think?
So when we talk about the AI as a technology, it's accelerate the economical growth, and we see the impact and also how much it its impact on the economical growth is more than 90.9 billion by 2030. However, what needs to be done is really the skills. Some of the employers, and 39% of an average of the workers, will see their skills updated. So it's important to start now for tomorrow or even yesterday to build capacity in that area. The second thing is also to avoid a huge or more digital divide. Is, as we are sitting today and talking, the third of the globe still and remain offline. So it's important to ensure that connectivity is not just a national asset, but it's a global need to build the next future and to have an inclusive future with AI. AI is not a technology that happens today. It's a technology since 1918, but at that time it was analyzing data. Today it's creating data, like from ChatGPT, it creates. But the near tomorrow is agentic AI that will act. So we need to be ready from skills perspective, capacity building. We need to be ready also from a technology perspective, but we need to be ready also from an ethical and policy, ethical AI and policy perspective, and not only from a cybersecurity and national sovereignty perspective. And therefore, under the umbrella of DCO, we are working together with our member state, with partners, observers, and it's important to include also the private sector because it's the core of the technology.
And how is the DCO funded exactly?
So it has been funded, as I mentioned, during the G20 by a huge necessity for the digital economy, but 5 funders, and now we account 16 member states, 55, as I mentioned, observers and partners. It's funded through our member state, but also other initiatives that have been rolled out from products, services, and solutions.
And one of the really striking things about your 800 million people under your umbrella, the DCO, is that 80% of them are under the age of 35. And I did say we'd come back to the youth and to women as well, because combined with your goal of empowering women and empowering those 800 million who are many of them under the age of 35, I mean, you sound a lot like a lot of the goals of Vision 2030, which is, of course, Saudi Arabia's vision. Is that why you're headquartered in Riyadh, do you think?
I think it's, we are an intergovernmental organization, international one, and we see also many of the international organizations today moving, not only headquartered in New York or in Geneva. We see many moving to Qatar, to Lebanon, and Bonn, Nigeria. So it's not about the headquarters as much as it's about a common vision together with our member state, and it's more about also the need and the necessity of inclusion. Today is not, I mean, just a must, but it's really a need for inclusion. And the women today are half of the globe. And if we empower women, we empower GDP, we empower economy, and we empower job creation. So therefore, we are very much focused on that part. So how we can empower women, and also the targeted finance and investment will lead to more inclusion. Therefore, we launched We Elevate as one of our flagship initiatives to support women moving from offline businesses to e-commerce, and not only providing them with a platform with our observers, but also providing them with skills, with capacity building, that they can be digital savvy, financial savvy, and also trade savvy, and connecting them with the financial sector that they can scale. And we have concrete example of success in Rwanda, where we helped more than 150 commerces to scale, to expand, and one of them expanded to 25 countries now, moved from 2 employee to 60 employee, and that shows the importance of such initiative when the investment is targeted. That makes less fragmentation and more inclusion.
Okay, and just lastly, because we're nearly out of time, we're always looking towards the year 2030 on this program for obvious reasons, like the one I just mentioned there, Vision 2030. Where do you see the DCO in 5 years from now?
Impacting digital divide, impacting or closing the digital divide, that's one. Achieving more inclusion, for sure, and achieving also that the next generation is fit for the future from skills perspective, from economical growth perspective, but also have the foundation, which is policy harmonization, to lead technology or digital economy more inclusively, in more prosperity and in peace.
Okay, Hajar Al-Haddaoui, the Director General of the Digital Cooperation Organization. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much.
And finally, Saudi Arabia is taking an increasingly leading role in global humanitarian work. The kingdom has carried out more than 8,000 humanitarian relief, development and charitable projects worth more than $142 billion combined across 173 countries. Well, these projects cover key sectors like health, food, security and education and water. Well, this means that Saudi Arabia is one of the top donors worldwide and ranks first in the Arab world when it comes to global humanitarian work. Well, that's all we have time for this special edition of the Riyal Deal Plus here on Al Arabiya English. Thank you very much indeed for watching. We'll see you again very soon.